Chapter 5. The next day and the next I went around in my antelope clothes, with the purple dots on my cheeks and the vermilion painted ears and the part in my hair. I went gracefully in my new moccasins that made a sound like the wind in the trees. But Red Hawk took no notice of me, though I passed close to him many times. One day as I was coming back from the village spring, dressed now in my old clothes and with a jar of water balanced on my head, he stopped me. In a haughty way, as if he were not the son of Black Moccasin, but the chieftain himself, he asked, "Are you the girl I have seen?" I was able to say, "You see many girls. I do not know if I am the girl you have seen." He was not pleased. "You carry water in a jar. You sit by the fire and stitch. You're the Shoshone? The one that Tall Rock captured?" "Yes." "Do you speak Minnetaree?" "Some. Not much." "How much? I gave a speech in your hearing. What did I say?" The truth was, I wasn't listening. I was sitting in a strange place among strangers. My cheeks were covered with purple dots, and the inside of my ears were painted crimson, on display before a man it seemed my fate to marry. I couldn't listen. Red Hawk thought I was shy. He asked me again what I had heard. Since my childhood, I had heard dozens of speeches by men back from the hunt. So I took pieces out of what I remembered and answered him. He seemed pleased, but more with himself than with me. When I had finished, without a word, he strode away. After I reached the longhouse and emptied the water, I was sent back for more. Now that summer had gone, the spring ran in driblets. Night was gathering by the time I filled the jar again. As I balanced the jar on my head, a hand reached out and touched my arm. A hand with a knife in it. "Quiet," Tall Rock whispered. Uh-oh, Tall Rock. I dropped the jar and started to run. The cold blade of the knife pressed against my back. I tried to scream, but all that came out of my throat was a gasp. "Quiet," Tall Rock said, pushing the knife. "You will not be hurt." A horse was tied to a tree near the spring. Tall Rock lifted me to its back and slid up behind me. He kept the knife against my back as we circled the village. Fires were burning in all the lodges, but no one took notice except a dog that barked at us and followed at our heels to the northward trail. Dark mist dripped from the trees. Tall Rock put his knife away and rode with his arms around me. His breath was hot on my neck. "We go to Hidatsa, the village of the good Minnetarese where I have friends," he said. It was the first warmth I had ever heard from him. "I know the chief of Hidatsa. He is my friend and not a friend of Black Moccasin. He will protect us. We will live in his big village forever." I gripped the horse's mane and tried to calm myself. The chieftain of Hidatsa was known and hated for his brutal deeds, even by his own tribe. His real name was Kakoakas, but behind his back he was called by a French name, Laborn. If a mother wished to scare a naughty child, all she needed to say was, "If you're not careful, the monster Laborn will get you." There was no moon to see by, and twice we even got lost. So it was nightfall of the next day before we reached the Hidatsa tribe. We went straight to Laborn's lodge, which was larger than the one I lived in. Its walls were hung with rows upon rows of scalps and other trophies. Laborn was stretched out on a buffalo robe beside a fire, eating his supper. He stopped eating, but did not move from his bed. He looked up at Tall Rock, then at me. He was called Laborn because he only had one good eye. The other eye had something over it that looked like a little white curtain. Tall Rock talked a long time about the good things he had heard about his friend Kakoakas, and the chief's many exploits, and how much the people in Hidatsa village loved him, and how much he was feared and hated by Black Moccasin. At last he came to his reason for being in the presence of the great chief of the Hidatsa Minnetarese, whom he called Kakoakas, because he knew that the chieftain did not like the name One Eye, which many people called him behind his back. As you are aware, he said, your enemy, Black Moccasin, is too ancient to take this girl for a wife. Instead, he has chosen a son to take his place. Red Hawk? Leborn asked. The one who has a large bug in his head? Who talks about himself even in his sleep? Aye, Tall Rock said. Black Moccasin has no right to give her away to his son, and the son has no right to take her. No right? Leborn said in a high, thin voice that sounded like the lash of a whip. No right, because you captured the girl. He paused to gaze at me with his one good eye. A pretty girl. A Shoshone? Yes, I thought so from the look. Gentle people, but full of craziness if their pride is touched. One of my first wives was a Shoshone. Long ago, I could not tame that one. Well, the first story I had heard when I went to live with the Minataries was about Leborn and his Shoshone wife, the one he had killed in a fit of rage. What do you want from me? He said. Speak, and it belongs to you. A place for us in your village, away from Black Moccasin's wrath. You came on horses? Only one. Bring it, Leborn said, pointing to a corral in the far end of the lodge. Tall Rock went to get the horse. How old are you? Leborn asked me. 13, I told him. Have you already been married before? No. Do you want to marry this guy? I hesitated, afraid to answer one way or the other. I was afraid of both men, of Leborn too. You look frightened, he said, lifting himself to his feet. You don't have to marry Tall Rock. You know this, daughter. I can send him away now, tonight. You will be safe here with Chief Kakoakis. Sorry. Tall Rock led the horse to the corral and came back to us with a long speech. Leborn paid no attention. His one eye passed over him and fixed onto me. Uh-oh. Poor Sacagawea. She's caught between a rock and a hard place, isn't she? She's got this guy Tall Rock who captured her, who she does not like at all, because he's the guy who killed her mom, right? Or this guy Kakawakis, who killed his wife, who was a Shoshone. She is in a bad place. What's she going to do? Let's find out. Chapter 6.